Today, we're going to go through Ordeal by Cheque a second time. And this time, as we go through, I want you to make some notes. Make some notes about what you think is happening, where you see changes, where you see years change. Maybe you want to put a big star there. Maybe you have an idea about what might actually be happening in their lives at this point in time. I want you to jot little notes down on your copy as we go through this a second time. I'm going to be explaining what some of the things are, making some suggestions as we go through. You do not have to take my suggestions. If you have something better, more original, then I encourage you to use that. Please don't write down everything I say. Instead, listen to it, think about it, and then we'll add to everything. We start on August 30th, 1903. Lawrence Exeter writes a check of $148.50 to the Josie Lander Baby Shop. On September 2nd, 1903, he writes a check to the Hollywood Hospital in the amount of $100. On October 3rd, 1903, he writes a check in the amount of $475 to Dr. David M. McCoy. December 17th, 1903, he writes a check to the California Toyland Company in the amount of $83.20. Notice that it changed from Lawrence Exeter to Lawrence Exeter Sr. once he paid the doctor. Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes a check to the Palisade School for Boys in the amount of $1,250 on October 6, 1909. On April 18, 1910, he writes a check out to the City Bicycle Company in the amount of $52.50. Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes out a check to the Columbia Military Academy in the amount of $2,150 on August 26, 1915. September 3, 1921, he writes a check in the amount of $3,885 to Hollywood Cadillac Company. Then on September 7, 1921, Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes a check to the Wilshire Auto Repair Service in the amount of $288.76. On October 15, 1921, a check goes to Stanford University in the amount of $339. Then on June 1st, 1923, Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes a check to Miss Daisy Windsor in the amount of $25,000. June 19th, 1923, writes a check in the amount of $585 to the French Line, is a place in France. On August 23, 1923, he writes a check to the Bank of France in the amount of $5,000. February 13, 1926, he writes a check in the amount of $76.50 to the University Club Florist. Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes a check out to the University Club Florist again on June 22, 1926, in the amount of $312.75. On August 11th of 1926, he writes a check to Riviera Heights Land Company in the amount of $56,000. October 30th of 1926, he writes a check out to the Renaissance Interior Decorators in the amount of $22,000. November 18th, 1926, he writes a check out to Beverly Diamond and Gift Shop in the amount of $678.45. Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes a check to the Hawaii Steamship Company in the amount of $560 on November 16, 1926. November 21st, 1926, Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes a check to his son, Lawrence Exeter Jr., in the amount of $20,000. November 22nd, 1926, Lawrence Exeter Sr. writes out a check to the Ambassador Hotel in the amount of $2,250. December 1st, 1926, he writes a check out to the University Club florist in the amount of $183.50. Lawrence Exeter Jr. now has the checkbook, and he writes out a check on February 18th, 1927, to the Coconut Grove Sweet Shop, the amount of $27. Lawrence Exeter Jr. still has this checkbook, and he writes out a check on July 16th, 1927, to the Parisian Gown Shop in the amount of $925. On December 1st of 1927, Lawrence Exeter Jr. writes out a check to the Anita Lingerie Salon in the amount of $750. April 1st, 1928, he writes again to the Parisian Gown Shop in the amount of $1,150. Lawrence Exeter Jr. writes to the Modern Sports Shop on November 1st, 1928, in the amount of $562. On July 1st, 1929, he writes a check in the amount of $145.25 to the Bouterie. Lawrence Exeter Jr. writes a check on August 23rd, 1929, to Tony Spigoni. He writes another check to Tony Spigoni in the amount of $126 on August 30th, 1929. On May 25th, 1930, Lawrence Exeter Jr. writes a check out for $87 to the University Club florists. He writes a check to Broadway Diamond Company in the amount of $575 on May 28, 1930. November 13, 1930, he writes a check for $50,000 to Miss Flossie Wentworth. Then on November 14, 1930, Lawrence Exeter Jr. writes a check to Wall and Smith Attorneys at Law in the amount of $525. Then he writes a check to Mrs. Lawrence Exeter Jr. in the amount of $5,000. On June 20th, 1931, he writes a check of $52 to the municipal court. Then on June 20th, 1931, he writes a check to Marie Wheaton Exeter in the amount of $175,000. June 20th, 1931, Lawrence Exeter Jr. writes a check to Walker and Walker in the amount of $700. A check to Wall and Smith in the amount of $450. Tony Spigoni shows back up on July 1st, 1931, and gets a check from Lawrence Exeter Jr. in the amount of $100. Tony Spigoni gets another check on July 2nd, 1931, for $100 from Lawrence Exeter Jr. Lawrence Exeter Jr. also gives $25 to Peter Vinzetti. Then, July 5th, 1931, Hollywood Hospital gets $100 from Lawrence Exeter Sr. Dr. David McCoy gets $175 from Lawrence Exeter. Sr. is taken off now. Hollywood Mortuary gets a check for $150. $1,280 from Lawrence Executor. That is all of the checks. Notice that the checks begin at a baby shop in 1903, being signed by Lawrence Executor. That means he doesn't have a son or a father that has the same name, so he's just that. Changes to Lawrence Executor Sr. once a baby is born. Then we notice that it ends at a mortuary, which is where a dead person would be. And again, it's signed by just Lawrence Executor. Senior is taken off whenever Dr. David McCoy is paid some money. And this is all taking place in 1931.